Thank you. So we have all of our speakers and panelists join in. I'll very quickly start with introducing all of our speakers. If you guys can, when I sort of introduce you, just wave in front of the camera so that our audience knows who you are. I'll start with Shravan. I think Shravan has been introduced, but for those joining us right now, Shravan is a principal product manager at Byju's. Byju's is India's biggest edtech platform, amassing over 80 million users. He's also an educator and runs his YouTube channel by the name of Swagwala PM, and the co-founder of Product Tree, which is one of India's largest product communities. We have Dr. Farah Arif also on on our panel. Dr. Farah is a professor of marketing at leading Pakistani institutions like UMT and LUMS. She's also the founder and CEO at EdTech Works. EdTech Works is an experiential learning platform that offers online digital products for business education, mainly targeting university students and corporate executives. We also have Fahad Tanveer, co-founder and CEO of EdCasa. EdCasa is Pakistan's leading edtech startup, which help high school students prepare for their exams online every day in a fun, interactive way by providing personalized lesson offerings. And lastly, we have Aditya Kaushal. Aditya is an ex-product manager at Jurica. He's a senior product manager at Hiration. And Hiration is basically helping job seekers find new jobs globally, and they optimize and manage their professional identities via creation of resumes and just helping them find jobs, etc., etc. Now, just to lay down the context of the conversation ahead of us, both Pakistan and India have an education problem. Pakistan has the second highest number of out of school children. And similarly, India's higher education system does not have the capacity to achieve enrollment ratios anywhere close to those of other middle income economies like that of Brazil and China. But both these countries also have two of the youngest population. Being able to educate and upskill this surging youth presents tremendous opportunity for both countries' economic growth and modernization. And we've already started to see India reap great benefits of their initial investment in their workforce. So I'll start with you, Shravan. And how have EdTech platforms led innovation to disrupt the traditional learning model to build a more interactive experience with personalized learning algorithms that allow their services to adapt to each user's pace and needs?
Correct. So it's a very interesting question, Abdul. So the way I look at it is that education as a very fundamental problem has two aspects to it, right? The first aspect is infra and the second is access, right? Now, infra as a core solution cannot be fundamentally solved without government intervention, right? The government has to intervene, build schools, supplement a lot of ecosystem changes that has to happen. But the other thing, which is kind of still a problem with us, was access, right? How do you effectively bring the higher quality teachers on a platform where a lot of students from a lot of backgrounds, multiple diverse backgrounds, multiple income channels are effectively able to kind of get that across? So that is where I think the edtech revolution kind of started in India, where we wanted to democratize high quality teaching. It was primarily because of two reasons, right? The first reason primarily was that India, Pakistan, or if you look at Southeast Asia, education is more like a level up in life. It is more like a game changer for you, right? So people are really wanting to study and they want to get into the premier institutions like IITs, IIMs, and other institutes, which was not possible for someone in a tier 3 town to think about it, right? So that was the first thing. But people spend a lot of money over there. So if you see that with the advent of internet, the supplementary education sector, which is the tuition sector, has grown like 5x in the last 5 years. And it's about to hit like $60 billion in the next 2-3 years from the current $20 billion. So that is where edtech solutions have come in, primarily focused on low income, low internet bandwidth. That is where we have tried to build those solutions across. Also, the secondary part is that education was always seen something like a fear of missing out kind of a process, because parents always thought if their children did not study, right, they'll never be able to make the most out of it. But that didn't necessarily translate into different career choices, right? Because most students were pushed into either engineering, doctorate, or multiple other professions which are like widely accessible to us, right? But what happened as edtech became more personalized, more adaptive, more engaging, the learning for fun attitude started coming in, right? So students started liking mathematics as something they want to study, right? And once that happened, by the age of 12, there are a lot of people who are exploring other options, that I want to do a PhD in mathematics. I want to do something else in mathematics, right? Why do I want to be an engineer? So it has eventually moved India to a passion-driven economy. And I think that is the case with Pakistan also, and other startups in Bangladesh also. Have kind of been fortunate to talk to them. So these are the two big changes that EdTech has fundamentally brought, and that is why it's rapidly growing as an economy, and we are rapidly innovating to bring more and more engaging educational context to users. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Dr. Farah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the same thing, right? Given that you've also been an educator in Pakistan and now running your own learning platform with EdTech Works.
No, I completely agree with Sherwin that EdTech, the value that EdTech has brought on the table is engagement. So, for example, when we started our programs, people have told us that who will pay, for your programs in the times of, Google, in the times of other platforms where they can go and they can learn free of cost. It's about the engagement that lured the student or the executive, in our case, to the platform. So one thing is definitely the engagement. The second thing is the access. So, for example, when we run our programs, people sitting across Pakistan attend our programs. So, in the physical space, you cannot have the luxury to attend programs at such a low cost. So, it's engagement, it's the access, and the cost. So, because of EdTech, you have brought down the cost. You have really brought down the cost. So I think these are the three things. Because of these, we have really revolutionized our edtech space in a few years, and especially in the COVID, people have witnessed the utility of edtech, where students couldn't go out, where executives couldn't go out, but they continued their learning on the edtech platform. So I think these are the real aspects where EdTech has seen growth in the last few years.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much for that. And Chaman, you mentioned something about the creator economy. I'll come to that in a bit. I'd like to hear from Fahad, and just to talk about that. India has seen a surge of edtech adoption, right? With recently Eruditus becoming India's fourth edtech unicorn. We know that a similar opportunity exists in Pakistan, but what, in your opinion, are some of the biggest challenges to help us get there?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and some of the things that Shirvan and Farah talked about, I would agree with. So, but there's a lot of other things. I think every market brings its own opportunities and challenges. So, as far as edtech bringing greater access, I think there's no doubt about that. 7 years ago, edtech wasn't even really a possibility. Technology infrastructure, everything limited the ability for edtech to really take flight. And especially in our parts of the world where telecom really took off, and that kind of fueled opportunities for edtech along with other technology businesses to really take a meaningful stake in the ecosystem. So I think it's a really early days. Even though I am an edtech entrepreneur, I would still have cautious optimism. The reason is because we don't operate in a vacuum, right? We operate in a larger ecosystem, and we're still learning on how this change will impact real learning outcomes, impact on the economies, expectations from people, right? So one of the things I think, when we create a lot of access, we also create a lot of expectation. People, when they attend an online course, they feel like, now I deserve a $50,000 job. Whether I have that real validity of that skill, and there's a lot of supply of skill. Obviously, it presses down on the price, right? Like so there's a supply demand of the labor ecosystem that we're going to impact. So it's a larger microcosm that we have to kind of see where edtech plays a role, and we don't create a bigger problem than we're trying to solve. So I think that is where governments are still trying to understand, and something what Shirvan sort of kind of pointed out to, that the real intervention has to come where the public sector takes this a little more seriously. But I think I understand their challenges. But we're involved in a lot of policy in Pakistan. We engage with government pretty frequently. And I think I can understand their position, that because we may disrupt this space, we will disrupt a lot more than just education. And that will bring its own challenges that the government may not be equipped to take on all at the same time. Now, add that to COVID, that has created a whole new set of challenges. So I think as people who are trying to innovate in a space and trying to solve a very real problem of access to quality education, I think we need to take a wider view of, how are we creating an impact? And when we are creating that impact, how else can we help manage this impact so that everyone benefits at the end, right? Like, we are at a better world than where we started off from, not at a worse position than we started off from. So I think that it's a much more nuanced space than just saying, hey, we created access to online classes, now you can learn, great, now you got a certificate, you can code. So what, right? Like, I think the next steps also need to be thought out by great success stories like Byju's, right? Like, they have created that ecosystem. They have proven the case. Thanks for doing that for us. Now we have a guidebook to getting there. But at the same time, I think, you have bigger challenges now to see where, like, where do you take all these people who are doing so well, right? Like, what are they going to do in the new economy post-COVID? What are their new roles that you're going to be help to define the future to come? So exciting times, but with cautious optimism.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting point, right? Like you mentioned that either the organized sector, and then there's the unorganized sector that Shravan also pointed out, that the organized sector kind of looks at edtech platforms and as very transactional. Okay, I need a certificate. When I do it, I want a certain sort of payback on that. And if I don't see that payback, unfortunately, that edtech startup fails, right? Because one of the reasons for successes of edtech startup is that they bank on success stories. But what about giving that education to at the lowest strata of the society and at a very early stage, right? Primary education, kindergarten education, being able to take that wide public school infrastructure and changing it into virtual classrooms where, if I'm learning maths, for example, at like grade 1, my objective is not that 4 years down the line, I'm going to sort of earn an income through it, but just learning maths for the sake of learning maths. So,
yeah, I mean, can I take a quick stab at it? What you just mentioned, it's a great point. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like, you've got to have a horizon much further down than 5 years, right? Like, that's really important, because I think people who are in that position, like Sharvan or myself, or who can afford to have a longer term horizon than even governments, should take that opportunity. So let's take a step down, right? You said, okay, learn kindergarten maths, great. Then what happens, right? Then you want to go to middle school, right? Or you want to go to elementary school, and then you want to go to high school, and then you want to study science, and then you want to get into a medical school or an engineering school. Well, just in Pakistan, I'll give you a sense of it. About 5 million kids will appear in high school science exams, right, this year. And all of them think they can be doctors and engineers. Do you know how many medical school seats we have? 6,000, right?
Yeah.
So even if you are in the top 1%, you're not going to make it, buddy, right? It's not because that you were not smart enough or you don't have access. It creates frustration because that infrastructure can't come along at the same pace as what, say we're helping them push. Now, there's everybody's a first divisioner, great, so what, right? So I think it's a much more hand in glove sort of effort that needs to be put in, because we're going to put undue pressure on the entire economy if we pull out or we put out so many people who are deservedly accomplished at that level, but then they don't have a role in society that they can fill, right? It has to be a much longer vision. It has to be a much broader vision to create meaningful impact. Otherwise, we're going to be looked at as a problem maker, not a problem solver.
Yeah.
That's a very fair point, I think, which you have just mentioned. Very, very valid point, because I also fundamentally feel that is the way we have to evolve an ecosystem of creating better thinkers in general, who kind of effectively understand that whatever they like, they can move towards that profession. It doesn't have to be just choked towards engineering or medical seats or IIMs or stuff like law colleges, which are just the 3-4 forefronts. We have seen the growth of the country going in, but primarily moving towards passion. Nowadays, you see a lot of people, like I've seen a lot of Gen Z students, and they coming that I want to become a YouTuber, right? Because I feel that's just an amazing thing. And that's an outcome of EdTech. fundamentally that's an outcome of EdTech, because people are enjoying the process and they are not relying that that outcome is the deservability of getting a certificate. It's more the process that I enjoy, and the outcome is something that I want to figure out. And that is towards where we are also striving towards. We are moving away at least from that kind of stereotype that's built, that success stories lead to more success stories, but we are moving towards in creating success stories by themselves, that I figured out a path for myself. So I completely agree on that point.
Yeah, and I think that also kind of creates a very interesting also topic that I personally also want to talk about, and also we've got some questions for it. And I think Aditya, we can have you talk about it. Is what Shravan touched upon, is the rise of the creator economy, right? Now, edtech platforms are no longer limited to just teaching you, for example, just fundamental subjects, but also empowering you to be able to sort of learn skills to be a YouTuber, to be an influencer, to be a photographer, to be a video editor, right? And then also help you, and that given with the rise of platforms that allow you to be able to monetize on top of it, right? In terms of freelance work. So that's like how have edtech platforms enabled that? And then like both Fahad and Travan mentioned that when you have a sort of, you know, a lot of people that are skilled, but you no longer have the jobs, you have the supply, but there's no longer the demand for them. Or if the demand is there, it's just for, you know, a certain kind of quality of demand that's required. How are these kind of content creator economies or content creating platforms changing that? Or platforms that are empowering content creators?
So if I come to the EdTech part, how exactly EdTech organizations are enabling learning for different people. So as an example, the base was always classroom program, which we always considered to be something where people learn and engage with their colleagues and etc. So whenever I see EdTech learning, I see it as a 360-degree platform where I can say that you get whatever you are getting into a classroom program, and along with that, you will also have facilities like 24/7 support, which EdTech companies are providing, and along with that, you also have your peers onto a Telegram group and etc. So the most important problem which I saw earlier in the EdTech space was with respect to course completion, but now it is also being facilitated, and there are people to support you throughout the process. So as an example, coming back to the question which you asked, on which Shravan was speaking about, you can pick up anything which you want to learn, maybe playing guitar, making YouTube videos and etc. So you have a defined path which is being tailored for you so that you can go ahead and learn, effectively ensuring that you have a skill, you are getting the knowledge depending on whatever you want to do. Definitely there are skills for which we don't have desired opportunities till date. As an example, 3 years down the line, until the TikToks and YouTube shorts is still very new, where people started coming and creating their own content. But now going ahead with abundance and how exactly the ad space is changing with respect to how different organizations and companies want to promote on these channels, there is demand of video creators, YouTube video publishers and etc. So that is also evolving on its own. So this is what I would want to add. But again, with respect to what exactly people look for into an EdTech course or something, is with respect to learning that what exactly theoretically and practically that is being ensured. And apart from that, they also have a defined goal associated. As an example, someone wants to go for a job change, maybe, or someone is just looking up to learn a new skill and effectively earn a second source of income. So that is also possible throughout the globe. We have people, we are in a scenario, maybe we can say that we have an ecosystem where I can learn anything from anyone from anywhere. So this is something which was never possible. As an example, if I look back to my school days, I had to go to a specific teacher if I wanted to learn mathematics. And maybe if they are not into my city, so I come from a tier 3 city where there were 1 or 2 reputed teachers who are very good with mathematics. And if you want to learn something else, you have to relocate to a new city and again think on everything. So that is all not an issue now. Teachers are bringing, as you were saying, how exactly content curators are bringing up everything online. So that is also being done. Teachers are bringing on their courses. As an example, I see Udemy a very good example for the same. Anything you want to learn, you go onto the platform, a very cost economical way. You pay 500, 600 rupees, you start learning. And if you feel you have the interest for the same, you can go into a deeper course which engages you better, and again get the result which you are looking for. As an example, if it is with respect to learning, or maybe as you were mentioning, freelancing, so that is also possible. So this is something which is a total disruption which happened with respect to that boom. And again, COVID fueled it to such an extent that we are working from our home, and even without bothering. I think it has nearly been 2 years, and we don't have to think about how exactly productivity and everything is right now.
Thank you so much for that, Aditya. And I'd like to sort of similarly, Dr. Farah, because EdTech Works is a learning platform that's specifically targeted for business education for university students and corporate executives, right? And in your understanding, how is that again providing a platform for content creators to be able to sort of build their own virtual classroom and earn a revenue through it?
Abdul, I missed your question. Can you please repeat it? Because
Sure.
I think there was.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I audible now?
Yeah, this is better. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was saying that similar to you, similarly with like EdTech Works, which is an learning platform for business education targeting corporate executives and university students. How do you see that EdTech platforms basically empowering educators and content creators to create their own virtual classrooms and platforms to educate others and at the same time earn revenue through it?
Yes. I give you an example. During the COVID, government of Punjab, which is one of the provinces of Pakistan, they ran a program of e-learning and through its TEFTA, which is a vocational training institute. And we were learning partner of that. So it was a pilot project, and 15,000 students were trained online, and hundreds of instructors were also involved in this, and they used our platform for the learning courses. So it ran so successfully that the students who were doing these programs, and the programs were based on web page development, graphic designing, Amazon, they started earning while they were completing their project. So there are two things: students were learning, and they started earning, and at the same time, the teachers, they also developed their content, put the content online, and also earned. So this is what EdTech provides. This is the supply side, and that's the demand side. So both the sides can get advantage through EdTech platform. And this is what we have done successfully in the last 8 months. And it was COVID, which means that there was no physical interaction between the instructor and the student, but student and instructor, they instructor managed to deliver the knowledge, and the student managed to acquire the knowledge. So EdTech platforms are surely providing this quality opportunity for instructors and for the content creators who can really provide, who would like to earn online. And at the same time, it is providing a huge opportunity to the governments which would like to overcome this gap of quality instructors. And I tell you, students sitting in smaller cities were learning all these skills, which was amazing for us. So in the physical location, it is close to impossible to impart quality education to these students.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Farah. I also have like a couple of other questions from the audience. And one of them is that the relevance of traditional university degrees in with the onset of EdTech, specifically skill-based learning, becoming so easy to do via different platforms. It might just be very reasonable for someone, and also with leading technology companies no longer requiring you to finish traditional sort of university degrees. Google doesn't no longer wants it. No, neither does Facebook. You kind of just have to sort of if you are able to fulfill their standard and meet their criteria, then you basically don't need any education. And the idea is that with that skill-based learning, what's the relevance of university degrees, and how will that continue to sort of, how will universities continue to not become redundant in the upcoming years, and how will they maintain their relevance?
Should I take a stab at that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've always thought, see, education fundamentally, fundamental education, like how do you evolve in getting passionate about something, right? It has always been a factor of three things, right? The person who is teaching, the kind of engagement he holds with the students, and the content he delivers, right? These three things. So if you go like 1,000 years back, the concept of Gurukul was very, very famous, like where there was a small knit of students, 20, 25, 30 students coming in a class, and the tutor and the student had a very strong connect. They knew what he's doing. They knew what's his progress, right? As education became more democratized, right? Even though access got there, but education specifically has a quality and quantity ka inverse correlation. There's a very strong inverse correlation. When you make courses cheaper, you take away the personalized engagement, you take away a lot of cohort based learnings that you have, student interactions, and all of those things you take away from that, because it has become now a platform which you can access on your smartphone, right? Now what happens over there is that you might teach someone a transactional skill, but not necessarily a non-deterministic or a life-based skill, that how do you evolve in a difficult situation when you are in a job, right? When you are effectively, how do you try to find a different source of income, right? And eventually that's why you see that the CBC model is now becoming very famous. People are again coming to cohort-based courses, right? So specifically why that is important is because smaller cohorts where personalized attention is there is still a very strong need, and that is always going to happen in a physical ecosystem, right? Where you learn from your peers as much as possible. EdTech is going to enable that for sure. Yeah. For sure. But it is never going to take away the essence of learning from your friends or learning from studying with your peers about a group assignment that you're doing. So I think the future going forward is blended. Nobody is taking away the Harvard University of the world or the best universities in Pakistan or in India. It is just that education is going to, EdTech is going to rapidize that pace in terms of the kind of content that's going to put across will be more global. The opportunities will be more global. Like a student can Pakistan can today aspire to get a $150,000 job in the US, right? He just, and sitting in Pakistan, right? So this is never going to happen. I feel there will be definite adaptations and innovations of how the model will work out. Like people might go to universities for 3 days, and then the rest of the days they do an EdTech session specifically like that. But it's going to work hand in hand together, and that's where it's going to become a positive sum game. It's never be a zero sum game that to another side.
Yeah. Abdul, can I add something?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree that it's going to be blended learning. Blended learning is the future. But there is another very interesting aspect is the top universities of the day, they are going to stay here. But we have some very mediocre universities as well. The future of mediocre universities are definitely at stake. Because when students go there, students are primarily going there for peer learning, for entertainment, but the quality of education is not there, and they are expensive as well. So if we can have good edtech platforms in future, then those mediocre universities can simply be replaced. And the other point, which is very important, for example, the places where the students don't have access to universities. So for those students, edtech can play a huge role. Where they can sit in the smaller cities and they can get the education. So top universities are definitely going to stay here. Mediocre universities' future is at stake if they can get a good competition from it.
Yeah. Yep. Thought.
Sorry, it's just this is kind of where an educationist perspective might add a little bit more, of a perspective to the conversation. So I think the first thing to understand is what is a university, because I think there's a misnomer or misunderstanding that a university is a place of learning fundamentally. It's not. It's a place of research. Okay. So if you go to the top universities of the world, the professors don't care about your lectures, right? They care about the research, and if they have time, they'll teach you, right? That's what a university's fundamental job is, to conduct research and pass on that industry research to industry to apply, right? Like that's the job. It's not to lecture people. You're fortunate to be in that room with the person who is the foremost expert in that field, and you might rub off some knowledge, right? That's what really happens. I'm just trying to make sure that our audience understands universities are not a place of where lectures are disseminated, right? Now, coming to like the fact that what is the future of the university? So based on that, universities are fairly secure, right? As long as they keep doing research, they keep putting out cutting edge information and knowledge that can be passed on. EdTech is a dissemination tool, right? Like fundamentally right now, it's a dissemination tool. So previously when they had this research, they published a paper, and guess what? They came to a classroom and told all the students, hey, I found this out about theoretical physics in my research, and since you're my student at MIT, you will learn this, right? And that's why you went to MIT, because the foremost researcher was there. Now, EdTech can enable you anywhere in the world to learn from that foremost researcher. So there is a symbiotic relationship between EdTech and universities, not a competitive one. Now, coming to what Dr. Farah was pointing out, mediocre universities, I wouldn't call them universities. Those are just centers where knowledge is regurgitated. They're not knowledge creation centers. They're just places where the same thing is being taught, something that the professor, so to speak, has read in a book or has not even updated their lecture for 20 years and has been regurgitating. Those should be dead in any case, right? Because they're wasting precious earned money of parents and students' time. And I think that's definitely on the way out. And that can easily be replaced by EdTech, because now you can take an MIT course online. Why do you want to go to XYZ Tom, Dick, and Harry University and spend money? But the cost is still a prohibition, right? Like, so if you really want to get something credible out of MIT, which is not a flimsy course, you still have to pay for it, and you have to pay for it in dollars. I think the value addition will be where EdTech is fully embraced. I'm being an alumnus of Harvard University and watching HBS make that transition, with HBX while I was there. It is a difficult pill to swallow. It will take some time, because there is a debate that the EdTech experience will dilute the value of interacting peer-to-peer, what Shravan was talking about, right? But at the same time, I think that's where people like us are the most valuable to make sure that experience mostly translates through online learning. And it doesn't have to be through a live class or through video. It can be a mix of things. But it is our job not to just be a one-trick pony, but really try to think this thing out into more depth. How can we translate that experience from an MIT classroom or a Harvard classroom or a Stanford classroom to most kids around the world who really want that or need that skill? So I think it's a very symbiotic relationship. I don't see it being competitive at all.
So we almost, like, we are actually above our time, but I have a follow-up question to that very briefly. So, but I completely agree with everything that you said, but how do then universities, apart from like the very, very top one, or apart from universities in North America or Europe, where you have grants to be able to sort of sustain their existence, but what happens to universities where they come into an existential crisis? Because like you said, that it's just them doing research, but if students are not paying to come to the campus, then how are they going to be able to sustain their existence?
Do you know how much revenue Byju's makes?
I understand. I know
Yeah.
how much
So imagine if Byju's sponsored a few universities or started one of their own and started funding research, right?
Yeah.
That's how you do
Universities. Along with this, I'll also add, universities are also coming up with their online courses. So they also understand that this space is not something which they can miss on. So as an example, all of those big universities also have courses on Coursera since long. And even this is happening in India, would be happening in Pakistan as well. So they understand their existence.
Absolutely. And just to give you a sense of the #1 university, Harvard for that matter, right, at this point, 50,000 students enroll on campus, 80,000 enroll in their online program, right, which is the extension school. The average online degree costs about $45,000. The on-campus one costs about $100,000, right? They don't make less money out of online tuitions, buddy. And most people don't even complete those degrees. So what I'm just saying is you just have to see the equation in its entirety. I think it's only a matter of time before Byju's starts its own research centers to propagate cutting edge knowledge to people around the world. I mean, what I understand, their ambition is to make learning accessible to not just Indians, but everyone and anyone who wants to learn. Our ambition is similar, right? So I think the idea is that this industry is changing, but at the same time, it's not a zero-sum game. I think the important thing to understand is very sort of symbiotic relationship, and we should take it in that stride so that we don't waste energy artificially competing with each other, rather for the betterment of society and mankind.
Yeah. As much as I would like for this session to continue and go on, we have to close it. And hopefully we see many more of Byju's and Netcasa campuses across the world. So thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure having you here. And now I'll hand it off to Anam for our next session, which is breaking into product management. Thank you, guys.